I got my ex's new man taken away. Yeah, no longer in this country. And not only that, I decide to get a bit of revenge. And let me tell you exactly why I've reached this stage in my life. For most of my life, I've had a problem with picking women who were, well, decent. So much so that I even had a phrase for it: saving the world one moron at a time. One of my more spectacularly bad choices was a woman by the name of Claire. Obviously not her real name for the story, but hey. I'm 28 male, was engaged to Claire, 27 female. She was smoking hot. I'm talking a solid 9 out of 10 at the hardest rated scale. She and I just kind of clicked right off the bat, and it felt very natural. She seemed pretty smart too, and I felt like I lucked out. We were at the awkward friends but not friends stage for about 2 years. And then one night she just drops the L-bomb on me. We had then built a life together in a beautiful apartment and talked about marriage and starting a family. Claire is a graphic designer and I'm a marketing manager at a big shot firm. Beauty brand. We had issues, mostly her doing, but we always figured them out and we were finally stable. Everything was going so well. Or so I thought. My long-term relationship, 7 years plus, owned a house together, ended after my then-girlfriend started developing feelings for her coworker, whom I barely met. Let's call him Nestor. This took place several years ago, so I'll do my best with the dialogue and exact details, but admittedly, some things are a little fuzzy. Things began getting weird. He began staying up later and later on his group chat, sometimes till almost dawn. She would often not show up for pre-agreed FaceTime calls, etc. I tell her that I've been unhappy and needed her to be more present, but she simply would not care. She started hiding her phone screen while she texted somebody all the time, even changed her lock screen. She would say things in common conversations that were simply incorrect, like, "There's only 4 continents and the rest are actually owned by the Martian government and thus don't count," etc. And when challenged, well, she would do circular talk until you either agreed with her or just dropped the subject. She would also make claims that seemed entirely unbelievable, such as when I asked where she had been staying prior to her mother's house, she said she camped in the woods. When I asked how she did that for months on end without any gear, she simply gestured to herself and said, "This right here is all the gear I need." What is she even talking about? It was like she was a different person. At first, I just shrugged it off as me being insecure. Now, a few weeks back, I discovered that she has been having an affair with Nestor. I found out, and because of one of our other friends telling me about it, well, something told me to check her phone, so I later went through her messages, and I found out that she's been sending him dirty pictures and descriptions of how she wished that he'd come over and do dirty things to her, as well as constant reminders that she really, quote, likes him and wants to be with him, and it's too bad they have to keep it a little dirty secret. She made me sound like a doormat, a joke, an option, as if everything we had was just a plaything for her to play with. This has started about a year prior. Just before we bought the house, I didn't confront her yet. This summer, all of her friends have been playing a game together. Previously, we lost a game really bad and all agreed that the other team had a hacker. Claire said something like, "I don't get why anyone would want to cheat to win a video game." And I quickly said, "Really? I thought you were pro-cheating." A couple of people laughed, but she did not say anything for a minute. We started talking about whether or not to queue for another when she says, "I wish you wouldn't say stuff like that." That night, she says that she did not go far enough with the guy for it to be considered cheating. Well, this kicks off a huge argument, and she tells me that my working all the time was the reason she sought after somebody else, and I simply need to move on and get over the past and stop exaggerating what exactly happened, because it makes her look bad to other people. I've only ever told people the facts, And outside of our friend group, only like 5 people know, and it's nobody she even interacts with, so I don't know why she would care. But the betrayal did not stop me. I found out that Claire had drained our joint savings account the next day. For some context, we had our own personal debits. Mine was used for monthly stipending and spending, and hers was for, well, fun money. My savings had not been taken off since its creation of it, so I had quite some extras from it. So mine was the savings for bigger things like a car or a house. I did notice she had been spending quite some money recently, way more than she did when we were together. But it's her life and I have no notice. And well, I have no say in this, so I did not comment on it. She went to concerts, got a lot of takeout, went out a lot, turns out to be lavish vacations with her secret boyfriend, bought new stuff for her computer, and started with some bad habits again, which she even herself admitted to me. Well, so now I asked her to remove herself from the banking account. Right away, I tell her. She lied and said that she did. When I went to the bank to put money in the account, almost all of it was gone. I had a balance of $2,000 and a withdrawal of $55,000 taken out of my own savings. Even the safety deposit was paid with my money, as I had a lot of money on my debit back then and paid it straight off that. Without decency, she had been using our joint account as her personal little piggy bank, and to fund her affair and lavish lifestyle. The realization that she had been blatantly lying to me for over a year, had been leading a secret life right under my nose, is so overwhelming. Now, I can't even sue her as she stole all the money and legal expenses are just simply way too much. Before I could even breathe and think about how I could take some action, my ex and her secret boyfriend decided to sabotage my professional life. They fabricated a bunch of lies, started spreading disgusting lies that I had been embezzling money from the company and committing fraud at my job. God knows how much I love my job and how much I'm grateful for the company. These rubbish people went to my colleagues, my boss, and even some of the clients, and tried to make me look like an absolute criminal and liar. They even went as far as to create fake emails to prove their claims. Despite my innocence, this news spread to all my colleagues, and the entire office had to attend a meeting about stealing, and what should be reported versus what should not be reported. I was called in for a conversation, and the director had to fire me because, and I quote, multiple members of upper management had seen the emails where I was apparently confessing to embezzlement. These things are completely untrue and outrageous, which my work buddies backed up. He said I'm lucky that they're not going to press charges against me, as if they would win the suit with a bunch of emails. I kept making calls and trying to contact her, but she sent me a quote, LOL, this is your fault for doing what you did. She knows that I went through her private stuff. And then she said, enjoy being jobless because you'll be like that as long as I live. And blocked me. At that moment, I came to know her true face. I felt a sickening feeling in my gut and began to shake. Is this real? Am I dreaming? After some days, I tried to apply to other companies, but this incident made me almost unemployable, blacklisted in any other company in the market sector. It sent me into depression, spiraling for a good 5 months. Because of them, I'm now barely scraping by, living off my left-out savings and the help of some friends and my parents. My dad says he'll help me get another job, but guys, I'm furious. How does my boss have the right to fire me for something that never happened, simply based on some, emails? How does my ex-girlfriend have the right to do this to me? I was heartbroken, angry, and confused as to why she would do something like that. I'm literally jobless. Jobless right now. I needed this job so much, I literally changed, and I don't need to be punished for something I never did. I'm writing this because a few weeks back, I was casually delving into the bank statements and financial records, and I found that Claire had been paying her lawyer. At first I was confused. Why would Claire need a lawyer? But then it hit me like a ton of bricks. It wasn't for her, it was for Nestor, for his legal fees. Wow. I did a little more digging and found out that he was from the Philippines, living in the United States illegally. It was like a spark was ignited inside of me. I knew that I could not let them get away with that, with what they've done to me. Okay, so we're all located in a border state. Think a state with a lot of illegal immigrant problems: Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, or California. I'd rather not get more specific than that. I assume he is under a false identity, as he did not enter directly into the country, and with my little knowledge of immigration, you cannot just simply enter a country without proper documentation. Look, I know that most illegal immigrants are hardworking family folks, and I consider it immoral to get them kicked out of their homes. Yeah, it's illegal, but so's going 5 miles per hour over the speeding limit. And so it's not reporting that extra 50-cent tip that you made the other day. So, what I'm not against immigrants in any way, shape, or form. My grandpa immigrated here from Mexico, and if he didn't, well, I wouldn't be here. But what I'm against is cheating, lying, and stealing. This Nestor isn't a good man, not even close to good, and I was darn sure I needed to get him what he deserves. I think illegal flooding into my life and causing me to trouble is just a bit too much. I made an anonymous report, an online agency that you can report to, and so they got him out of the country for good. Then informed Claire that Nestor needed to leave. She begged and pleaded for me to give him a month. That month passed and no change. The next month passed, no change. I tell her she needs to leave, and she laughs at me and says if I try to kick him out, she'll go to the police and tell them that I've been harboring an illegal immigrant. So, I have a full report under my name. Within a week, I showed up at my doorstep. It was early in the morning, and I was getting ready for an interview. There were 2 agents standing there asking me for my name. Well, they asked for my ID and took a statement from me about the situation. I gave them the bank statements and receipts and explained everything. They also spoke to Claire. She initially denied everything, but eventually admitted to everything once presented with the evidence. Nestor was taken into custody and transported to a local detention center. From there, he must have been processed and, I guess, just deported back to the Philippines. It was quite a sight to see him getting taken away in handcuffs. Claire's now alone without any support of companionship. Yeah, she chose an illegal immigrant over the person she's been with for years, and that was in the line I could not forgive. To be honest, I felt a bit of satisfaction seeing him get what he deserved. Now, ever since I've done that, I feel like a huge weight's just been lifted off my shoulders. It's like I finally get justice for all the crap that they put me through. I mean, I don't want to sound like a vengeful ex or anything, but seeing Nestor getting taken away in handcuffs was pretty darn satisfying. And Claire, well, let's just say she's reaping what she sowed. She thought she could play with me, use me, and just toss me aside like a used napkin. But she got served a big fat dose of reality check right to her front doorstep. I don't feel sorry for her one bit. In fact, I kind of hope she learned her lesson and won't try to pull this kind of crap on anybody else. So yeah, I don't regret what I did, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. But this one's bothering me somewhere in my heart because it's something related to immigration that bothers me, but for personal reasons. Honestly, I feel a little conflicted about the whole situation. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Today's story is a wild ride. A lot of people in the comment section absolutely were disagreeing with OP, basically saying OP acted way too drastically, too quickly, and went overboard. Go ahead and drop your comments down below, let me know what you think, but there is multiple updates for this one, so sit back, grab your favorite beverage. Guys, Do not forget to subscribe. It's the best way to support me, and I appreciate it so much. Here's update number 1. It's been a few days since I reported Nestor to ICE and had him deported. I'll just address a lot of things here, including what happened after my last post. I still remember how I felt emasculated, embarrassed, and surprised she could ever talk about me like that to another man. Yesterday, I posted her incriminating screenshots to her social media feeds. Insta, Snapchat stories, since I had access to the accounts and I changed the password. I sent those screenshots to her boss. I did want him to know what kind of person she is. I know it might sound petty, but it made me feel better. Plus, I think people deserve to know the truth about her. After I posted those screenshots, Claire called me and begged me to take them down. She said she was sorry for everything and that she did not mean to hurt me, but honestly, her apologies meant nothing to me at this point. I told her, if you want me to take them down, confess your lies to my boss and colleagues and clear my name. With no choice left, she went to my office today, apologized to all, and to my surprise, she even sent us all the email that what she said was not true and that she was sorry for the trouble that she caused. I got a call from my boss some time back, and he told me how sorry he was for not believing me. Anyways, I took down Claire's stories, as promised, and shared with her the password that I used. I told her it's not my job, unlike you, to ruin somebody's life. Thank you to everyone who made comments and shared their thoughts and opinions. They were helpful. I promise I will update you soon. Update number 2. Hey guys, I'd like to start by saying that I appreciate all the comments that were given. Apparently, Claire still has her job, and she's doing damage control from social media posts. Let her live with that. She must have told about all this to Nestor, because just a few days after I took down the post, I received a letter. It was from an unknown sender, but the message was crystal clear. I'd made a grave mistake and would face the consequences, whatever that means. At first, I brushed it off as an empty threat, but things started to happen that were strange. My car was vandalized, and I received threatening calls in the middle of the night. I knew that I was being targeted by Nestor. I received a call from him a couple days back, and he had somehow managed to sneak back into the country. Apparently, he had somehow managed to get a waiver and re-enter legally. All the work I've done to get him kicked out, and now he's just back just like that. So I decided to confront him about it. We met in a public place, and he just smirked and told me that he had friends in high places, and that I would regret ever crossing him. I immediately reached out to the authorities, but they didn't seem to take my concerns very seriously. They told me that I had no concrete proof, that Nestor was behind the threats and vandalism. Now I'm thinking of my next course of action, as I'm really confused about what to do next. Update number 3. Hey guys, I could not reply to everyone who commented on my last post, and there were many people who DM'd me, including asking for an update. Nestor had tried to break into my home last week. Long story short, he's now arrested. I can't even begin to describe how scared I was that night. It was around 2 a.m. when I heard a loud noise outside my home. I immediately got up and went to window, and that's when I saw him. Nestor was there trying to break in the door. I called the police immediately, and I don't know how long it took them to get here, but it felt like an absolute eternity. At that moment in time, I felt like my life was in danger. I've never been so scared in my life, but finally, I saw the flashing lights right there in front of me of the police car, and I knew they had arrived. I heard them shouting at Nestor to get down on the ground. And then I heard the sound of handcuffs clicking into place. Glorious. They took Nestor away. They searched the perimeter of my house and confirmed that he did not have any accomplices there helping. I gave my statement to the police, and they assured me that Nestor would be charged with attempted burglary and would remain in custody until the trial. I still have nightmares about that. What could have happened that night? What if the police had not arrived in time? What if Nestor had managed to break in? I don't know if I'll ever feel safe in my own home again. I feel like I've been walking around with a dark cloud over my head since all of this happened. I'm constantly second-guessing myself and wondering who else I can trust. As for Claire, I recently found out that she was fired from her job. Apparently, her association with an illegal immigrant and a convicted guy did not sit well with her employer. She caused me so much pain and stress. And for what? Because she wanted to feel better about herself? Because she wanted to boost her own ego? Well, I can't even begin to understand her thought process. I've been going to therapy to help me deal with everything that's happened. It's been a difficult journey, but I'm slowly starting to feel better. I'm learning to trust myself again and to trust the people around me. In terms of my personal life, wow, things have been going pretty well. I started dating someone new and we've been getting along great. She's smart, funny, kind-hearted. We've been taking things slow, but I have a gut feeling like this could really turn into something special, maybe. I'm also now self-employed and I'm doing better than ever. Thank you guys for all the comments and help with my updates. Okay, so most of the comments were not okay with how OP decided to handle this, but I would like to know from you guys. This was a very sticky situation with a lot of moving parts, so let's talk about it in the comment section down below. How would you go about handling this? I would love to hear from you guys. A nightmare mother-in-law story where it turns out she likes my best friend more, and she tries to replace me in the relationship with my best friend. If you think I'm gonna let that go down, you have a second thing coming towards you. Guys, this story is wild. My name's Amy, and there's my nightmare story about my horrible mother-in-law, Karen. For some much-needed context before I begin this tale, we go back into high school, where I met my boyfriend, Andy. Ever since we first started dating, his parents were never nice to me. His mother, especially. And though I chalk this up to being cautious or overprotective, these feelings never faded. They never warmed to me at all, and it was never clear why she did not like me. The best we could surmise is that she would just be jealous of me taking Andy's attention, and perhaps worried that, quote, he could do better. In fact, she despised me so much that when Andy proposed last fall, she threw a temper tantrum, causing a huge scene at the restaurant and causing us to be asked to leave. We continued the conversation back at home, but his mother was defiant that Andy was making the wrong choice and refused to accept me. In her attempts to get her own way, she even told us that she refused to attend the wedding, which made Andy a little sad, but I reassured him that things would be okay. After this, we did not hear from her again throughout the months that we were deep in wedding planning. This silence continued up until the wedding day, and by that point it was too late for her to change her mind. She has kind of been sulking ever since, undermining and berating me at any opportunity. This continued until Andy got promoted at work, at which point their attitude changed somewhat. After only 2 years at the retail giant, Andy was offered a promotion during his performance review, due to his outstanding work ethic and customer satisfaction scores. He was thrilled about it, as we were all. To celebrate his climb up the corporate ladder, we wanted to throw him a big ol' party with our friends, which became tough to organize with our tiny one-bedroom apartment. Coming to our rescue were his parents, who offered their home for the party space. Well, Andy accepted without hesitation, though I was somewhat skeptical of their intention. After a while, I also warmed to them slightly, despite her many flaws. Just as our friends were due to arrive, his parents left. While I assumed they wanted to be in control of the situation at all times, they seemed comfortable letting Andy have fun without restrictions. It wasn't a big party, just a handful of our closest friends from work and childhood. The last to arrive was Jessica, 24 female, who had been my best friend ever since we were 5. We were having such a blast that we lost track of time. Andy's parents came home a few hours later, and we were welcomed at the door by a drunken friend who was waiting for the pizza delivery. While they seemed somewhat uncomfortable with our/my life choices, they did their best to hide any disappointment when Andy was in the room. Their presence seemed to kill the buzz for most of our guests, who elected to call it a night and shuffle out towards the closet club or bar to continue their debauchery. One friend, Jessica, stayed to help clear away the mess that we've made, and I was very surprised to find that Andy's mother seemingly did not hate her on sight as she had done for me and my other friends. In fact, she seemed quite smitten with Jessica, and I found them talking occasionally as I was moving black bags bulging with beer bottles out to the curb out back. The next morning, Andy and I fought through mild hangovers just to treat his parents to a brunch as a thank you for letting us wreck their house. Throughout the entire meal, the only subject his mother wanted to talk about was Jessica. At one point, she even regarded Jessica as, quote, the daughter-in-law I never had, though she said she was joking when she realized how tense and annoyed the atmosphere at the table was growing. Hangover aside, I was still used to this sort of treatment and did my best to make it look like it did not affect me. The last thing I wanted was for her to feel any sort of satisfaction from her taunts. I almost drowned her out completely when she asked me a question and prodded me under the table to snap me out of my daydream. When she realized I was not paying attention, she repeated herself, and I quote, what is Jessica's cell phone number? She asked expectantly in a tone that suggested it was more of a demand than an idle request. When I asked why she wanted it, she refused to elaborate, other than saying she just wanted to chat. I said no, well, at first, because it'd be a weird thing for her to have a number. But she got very angry when she was denied as she continued to ask for it. I found it very strange that she would not say why she wanted to contact her, and I don't think Jessica would have been happy with me just giving out her details to other people. In the end, I said I'd check if it was okay first with Jessica, which seemed enough to quiet her down until we left. I had no intention of bringing it up again, and hoped the mother-in-law would either be patient or even forget about it entirely. After coming back from work the next day, Andy said he was invited to a works conference the next town over. Not wishing to curb his enthusiasm, I encouraged him to go. Despite his worries about my commuting, I had a fear of public transport, something I had only ever told Andy and Jessica about before, so more or less I relied on the car to get to work. With a little white lie, I said I would ask a coworker just for a lift while he was gone. He expected it to only be a few days, so no issue here, I hoped. As he begged his bags, I rang a few friends to try and sort something out, but was met with rejection at each step. Even Jessica apologized for being too busy, though not wanting her to worry, I reassured her I would at least ask my mother-in-law as a last resort. With my options growing limited, I had only one number left to try. On the phone, the mother-in-law sounded pleasant until she heard who was calling. Immediately, she asked again about Jessica, which I narrowly steered into a normal conversation. Explaining my situation, I asked if she or her husband would take me to work until Andy returned. After a whispered conversation between themselves, she came back to me to say they would also be too busy. But before I put the phone down, she said she would be happy for me to borrow the car for that time, though. But I had to pay for my own gas. But still, I was a bit uneasy with the idea. But she would not take no for an answer, and so without room for thought, I accepted with a million thank yous. I had readied myself for a difficult task, but asking her was surprisingly easy. The next 2 days flew by. During the day, I was in the office, so I only remembered I was alone when I got home. I may have taken it easy and ordered takeaway, but why not? I was driving home from work the next evening with the familiar blue light flashed up behind me. At first, I thought they were for someone else, but with persistence, they signaled me off the road. I've never gotten into trouble with the law before, but I lived in a neighborhood where you saw cops often, that I didn't really feel too nervous. They were just ordinary people after all. It wasn't until after they asked that I remembered it wasn't my car. That was when the panic started. I explained, hey, I borrowed this car, my mother-in-law's, just for a few days, handing over my license, which they took with them back to their car for a minute. When they returned, I was ready to take my license back and drive home. Instead, I was ordered out of the vehicle. My panic grew worse. This was not right. I worried that he might not believe my story, but I could see he was also getting impatient, so I had to comply. The car ride over, it was spent by me, asking numerous questions and the cop saying nothing at all, just giving me the occasional backward glance in his rearview mirror. Upon arriving at the station, I had pulled down the hallway and I put through the procedure, echoing cries of innocence that I knew everybody must have tried at some point, as futile as screaming for your sanity at a mental institute. In fairness to him, he was the nicest person I've met so far, and a lot more talkative. He first asked why I did it, to which I only asked what he thought I did. Somehow I thought asking for my attorney now would only make me look guiltier. Whether he believed me or not, he laid out the full details of my arrest, handing me the case report. Mother-in-law's car had been stolen, reported a few days ago. A matter of minutes after I called to borrow it, in fact. In the heat of the moment, I may have lost my temper here, accusing her, trying to set me up, though it did little to help the situation. A pair of cops came into the room and took me back down the hallway, turning a corner and leading me back into the jail in the very back. But at this point, I was too tired and sore to even care. I just wanted to go back to sleep and forget this ever happened. I fell into the cab and sat dozing between my dream world and reality until I blinked and I was home. I forked over what little cash I had left and stumbled to the front door. I could not tell what time it was, but the light was blinding, and only by luck I did not walk into the door itself or fall off the porch steps. Shutting the door behind me, I threw off my shoes and sat for a moment at the bottom of the staircase, head in hand as I quietly groaned. I thought I heard voices from one of the rooms, though I could have mistaken it for thin walls between the apartments. I went to make sure. Turning into the living room, I found my boyfriend, my mother-in-law, and Jessica sitting on the sofa having tea and biscuits. They all turned to look at me with mixed reactions. Andy was worried, mother-in-law was indifferent, and Jessica flashed the faintest of warm smiles. He came home last night but got worried when I never came back, then started driving around the neighborhood early into the morning just looking for me. When he came back, they were already here waiting. My attention now turned to mother-in-law, who sat watching us carefully. I had neither the patience nor the mood to play games with the devil woman, so I let loose, ripping into her as harshly as she had occasionally graced me. I accused her of planning to get me arrested after reporting the car she lent me stolen. Jessica sat next to her and she seemed to be hunched smaller as if to avoid being seen. My mother-in-law retaliated and returned fire. Coming to Jessica's defense, tired of the argument growing in my home, I ordered them both to leave, happily pushing that lady, that was Andy's mother, closer to the door. When words were not enough, Andy was pale with horror. I don't know whether he meant to try to stop me, but he simply froze at the moment. I marched to the bed and slept until morning. Update number 1. It's been just over a week since my mother-in-law's plans were ruined and she was revealed to be a dirty snake. One day, when I was working at home, I got a knock at the door, and I hurried to the door expecting it to be some groceries that I ordered online. Instead, it was Jessica, my former best friend. I hadn't spoken to her since the day I found her in my home with my boyfriend. I didn't know how involved with my mother-in-law's plan that she was, but for all I knew, she could have been the reason I was arrested. She could have been a part of the whole thing. I could tell she had something to say, so I decided to invite her inside and just get it over with. She followed slowly as I moved into the kitchen, putting a countertop between us as I stopped to flip on the kettle. Passing over a mug of tea, she thanked me weakly, and then I pressed further to hear why she came. Stumbling through her words, Jessica apologized for how it looked the last time she was here. At least she knew I was right to be angry. When it came around to my turn to speak, I questioned when it was that mother-in-law swayed her to the idea of replacing me. Hearing that she firmly met my gaze and denied involvement, she explained that she had no idea what was going on. First, my mother-in-law called her and invited her over without going into details. She even asked Jessica to pick her up, saying that her car had been conveniently stolen yesterday, although she did not sound upset or even worried about it. After Jessica picked her up, my mother-in-law started to work her charm on my friend, gauging her interest into my boyfriend. Jessica thought she was being fed a little secret that Andy had told his mother about our relationship failing. It was not until much later that she learned what it meant. After more prompting about her stolen car, my mother-in-law said that the car had been found and the car thief was caught. Jessica carried on asking questions until they saw Andy's car pulled onto the driveway, at which point Jessica was ordered to keep her mouth shut about it. When he entered the apartment, he was very surprised to see that Jessica and mother-in-law were waiting for him. This gave her the first clue that the pair had not actually been invited. After sitting down, Andy asked whose car was outside, and Jessica explained that she drove them there as his mother's car was stolen last night. My mother-in-law avoided the question by saying I had taken the bus to work instead, something they both knew I would never do. Remember my last conversation with Jessica over the phone? She quietly excused herself. She knew that I had planned to borrow my mother-in-law's car, and my sudden absence had helped her realize the trouble I was landing in. A few minutes later, she had paid my bill anonymously and returned to the living room where I later found her. I was shocked and embarrassed. I had doubted my best friend so much that I was willing to cut her out of my life because I saw her with my mother-in-law. At the end of this, I was in shock. I asked Jessica why she did not mention this earlier, but she had been threatening into silence by my mother-in-law and was scared to speak up. Update number 2. With the determination to get revenge and the proof to enable it, Jessica took me into town later that afternoon to meet with an attorney. 10 working days of silence later, he called back to arrange a second appointment. The only problem was that my boyfriend picked up the phone. I now had to very gingerly explain the lawsuit that I wanted to file against his mother, which also met with opening his eyes to the disgusting person that she was. It took all weekend, but eventually he did accept my perspective, admitting that he had noticed her behavior change since bringing me, but was never brave enough to do something about it. With his blessing, I went back to the attorney to add the finishing touches to our declaration of war. Although Andy was ashamed of the upset between me and his mother, he relented to my decision and let me take them a lawsuit directly. He initially wanted a courier to deliver it, but after much convincing, he agreed to let me do it. It was the least I deserved for what she had caused me. Despite her feelings, I never hated her. But now I was ready to return that anger, exhausting my attempts to explain or reconcile the issue. I passed the responsibility over to my boyfriend, who stood a far greater chance of getting through to them. 20 minutes later, the conversation had chilled enough that I could rejoin it without any fears that my presence would cause them to erupt again. Of course, they were not happy with the charges, but I had a right to be angry as well, since everything bad that happened to me that day was because of her. The mother-in-law apologized and apologized in a very moving performance. It even gave us a brief doubt about our actions, but I held strong, and we ended the call after saying we needed time to ourselves. Update number 3. By the time we saw his parents again, it was from across opposing sides of the courtroom a month later. I gave some thought to the lawsuit since their first attempt at changing my mind, but decided to press forward with a measure of stubbornness and determination. We were both eager to find this up ASAP, and the issue was so trivial to the jury that we were able to reach a clear verdict after the first trial. Possibly due to the witness testimonies Jessica provided and the lack of strong defense on their side. At 3 p.m., the case was dismissed when mother-in-law was found guilty of false accusation, wasting police time, and conspiracy to even commit perjury. In a surprising twist, the jury, while clear on the guilt, was tied to the punishment and elected that I should have a say in it. Without hesitation or remorse, I agreed to a sentence of 3 years in jail. But I did allow for parole. I wasn't completely heartless. Given her age, I expected she'd proverbially jump at the ladder, but still, I knew the idea of her being cooped up in the system would be awful for her. Planning ahead for revenge after her release, I also petitioned for a restraining order, which, given her offenses, history with me, the jury was happy to oblige. Now she could not even come 500 meters to me, or Andy for that matter if we're together. A few weeks have passed since my triumphant at court, though it's also come with some doubt. Many of my and Andy's friends who told this story were torn between feeling sorry for us and his mother. They agreed that she deserved some punishment, but wonder whether I took it too far. Not to mention the occasional repeated calls from Andy's family, also ready to insult or complain to me about the jail sentence. So, really, what I wanted to ask here was, am I the a-hole for sending my mother-in-law to jail? Well, at least OP could come out on top of that at the very end of it all. But I would like to hear from you guys how you would have handled this situation, because I know from all the comments that a lot of people have had nightmare mother-in-laws. And I will never get sick of reading a mother-in-law drama story. I tell you what, it just seems like something new every single time. Guys, let me know what you thought about this story, so drop your opinions down below. My name's Mr. Reddito. If you're new to the channel, I narrate stories every day, animate them, put them on YouTube for you guys to enjoy, pass a little bit of time by, and, well, whatever else helps you out. If you do enjoy the stories, just know the only way I ever ask you to support me is just by clicking the subscribe button. So guys, have a fantastic day, and I will see you tomorrow. Peace.